Alright guys, we're live. So in this video we're going to be building like a video processing server, and I'm going to show you why we need to do something like this, or why we'd want to like do video processing on the server instead of just doing it on the front end. So okay, let me just show you an example of what we want to do. So we want to be able to take a video like this. You look at a video like this, it says 1 minute and 1 seconds, right? It's kind of similar to what you do on Instagram. When you want to upload the Instagram stories, what you do is you upload a video, and depending on the settings on Instagram, it might be, I think, if the max amount of story of seconds you can have in the stories, I believe, should be about 30 seconds. So in that case, when we get to a video like this, when we get to a video like this, we want to be able to split this into 30 seconds chunks, right? And discard the rest, like this 1 second, probably not need it, or just have 31 seconds instead. So 31 seconds. So the idea of this is when you put this, it sends it to the server, and the server splits it and sends us the chunk into bits. Does that all make sense? Right. So you get the idea. So why are we doing this on the server? So first, video editing or video manipulation on the front end is pretty whack. It really sucks. Right, and I've gone through several implementation of this, trying to do this on the front end, and it really sucks. Eventually, I had to use Ffmpeg, which is, there's a WASM library, which is a WebAssembly library for this, and just to be honest, using WebAssembly is not yet there yet. Some browsers don't really support it. I mean, look at Safari. It just doesn't really work well. So like most of my code were dependent on like what the client had installed on their end, and I didn't like that at all. So I decided to move this functionality to a standalone server written in Rust. All right. So let's look at it. What are we going to be using? So I picked to use like this Rocket framework. It's a web framework for Rocket for Rust, and seems very interesting. So I've not used it before, so we're going to use it together here now. I mean, I used it to build this, but I actually didn't use it before. So let's just walk through it. So you can go through the installation. I mean, this particular Rocket is actually available on stable, so you don't really need to switch your version, I believe, your Rust version. So there are a bit of changes that have occurred. So let's just get started. So let's start. We don't have enough time, do we? Let's start. All right. So let's do cargo. What is it? Cargo init. Video process. So yeah, I believe it's cargo init. Jesus. So let's open VS Code on this. I hope you understand like what we are doing now, like why we are trying to do this. So the advantage of having this on the server side is that you don't have to worry about what the front end is running, and like you'll be good most of the time. Get. So that's really the good advantage of this. So I believe on this Rocket framework, for this particular version, you actually don't need to run. You don't need a main entry point. I think they define their own main entry point, which is it's not that bad. I like it. So okay, I do believe you can switch to stable if you prefer to use stable, but I think most people are unstable, aren't they? All right. So as I said, we don't really need the main function. What we need is a Rocket function, which is going to be the entry point. So that's what that macro launch does. So let's just take that. Let's discard this. All right. So the idea is that like the main function, basically what the main function does is that when the Rust compiler looks at your code, it sees where to start from. So it starts from that function and starts executing your code. But apparently you can actually define your own entry point. So that's what this guy do with this particular macro here, is to make this the entry point of the application. I don't know why they did that, but such is the. All right, let's install Rocket. Actually, can you imagine? Let's install Rocket. So I believe I need some kind of. I need like, let me see what I need actually. Yeah, I need JSON, because I'll need to be doing some JSON stuff. Right, that's good. I feel like you should ignore this one in this. believe it's because this version 5 is not 0.5 is not really stable yet or something. I don't know. So okay, let's ignore that. So let's just do a quick import. So let's just do all that. Alright, so we've got Rocket installed. So this is the way you install Rocket apparently. Extend. Right. Rocket. So when you look at this build function, we have this mount. We have the mount which takes in a list of routes. So let's think of the routes we need in an application like this. So first I want to send over the video to the server. Right. Then I want the server to return me the video split into multiple parts depending on the configuration I set. Right. So let's say we need a post request, right? So we'll say let's call this start rails. Let's call it a function. Let me just look at an example on how they do requests, right? Something like this. Pretty nice. So start rails. Wanted to take in some parameters, sure. But so look at the way they do requests. You mount it on there's a post macro. Right. So let's just look at our requests. They have a good documentation here. Right, look at that. So you have to pass in the route. So let's call this start rails. How am I calling it reels? It's weird. Just calling it reels. Should be stories, but let's call it reels. Jesus. So okay. Good. So we wanted to take in a bunch of parameters like the duration of the video, like what is the maximum. For example, if you want the 30-second split, you pass in that the max amount of like duration you want is 30 seconds and so on. So I need to pass in the file. So let's define a struct called let's call it the rails. Let's just call it rails config apparently. Right. So it's a struct as the file. So let's say the file. I'll tell you what the file will be now. Then we have the max. Let's just call this the max duration, which will be like U64. Okay, so what would the file be? Let's talk about file. Upload. It's be a good, interesting problem. All right. Let's say file. Yep. Them file. All right. This is perfect. Look at this. Not even that. This. Look at that. So there's something called the temp file, which I'm guessing it's something that takes the file you upload and puts in a temporary directory that we own, which is good. So let's import this. It's essentially like use rocket fs temp file. There you go. Then you have the temp file. Interesting thing, you know that the temp file takes a lifetime annotation. So let's just see our lifetime is R. And you know why temp file takes annotation, lifetime annotation? Because I bet there's something within the lifetime here. Look at it there that takes in a reference. So what takes in a reference here needs, and also this needs to live as long as the temp file Then also the temp file needs to live as long, or at least as long as our struct here. Also, we need an annotation on our strong, which is to derive this form, which is kind of what to make it easy for us to inject it into our request here. So the other is that you take in a data which you can now pull in out here. So you have a data, it has to be formatted in such way like a form, something like that, right? So then we'll say the form, blah blah blah. Okay, that's good. So we see our form will be equals to the form of upload. And it's not upload, it's a real config. And we can pass in the lifetime, but we don't really care, so we just ignore it basically. Right, so we are good. What we want to do here now is we want to persist this code. We want to persist the file to our directory. I think there's a way they do persist. Yeah, it is. Look at that. So you can basically take the file and persist it to a permanent location, because we need to have this, like have it within a direction. I'll tell you why now. File dot, need to persist it. Persist to some kind of location, and we await it. So guys, like you see, we have to persist this to a particular file path. So what the file path is, we'll talk about right now. So but first, before that, I want us to change this to a Reels form, right? Because it's kind of like a form that the user is passing, so that's better. So you can see the form here is not imported. So I can't auto import that now. Let me just find what the form, how to import this form. Right, so you've got something like this. Good. So we've got that form. And let's talk about before we talk about that, let's talk about what file path will be, right? What is the file path exactly? So anytime a user sends us a file, we want to persist it temporarily to a particular temp file, right? And to get the temporary directory in Rust, right? Let's say Rust get the temp directory. Rust get temp directory. So let's check the docs, and this is how it goes. Just find out how you do things. Don't like that. Actually, let me see how I did it here. Right, EMV. Right, so we got something like EMV. We got EMV your temp directory dot, this EMV right here. Use std.env, which will give us this. So we need to say as, I think it's to string, and I think we need to unwrap this, because this is an option. We need to unwrap that. This is a reference to a string. So what we're going to do here is that we need to create a new file every time the user starts like a new rule, right? So let's make a format so something like this. So we say the first part is the directory here. Then we're going to get the timestamp, and we're going to use a timestamp. So we say Rust get timestamp. See, I've done this already. Okay, that gave me a good solution. Push. Nope. Yep, this is the solution I want. So we're going to import time. We're going to use this solution to get the timestamp. That's better. This is a U126. Interesting. So let's say let timestamp, and why we are using timestamp so that we have a unique name for each file that goes into the server temp directory. Timestamp will be equals to this. So that gives us this. So we're going to be like temp directory slash the timestamp. Still, the way the format works is each of this, right? This is this and this is this. Dot. Let's just say dot mp4 just to get this over with. So you've got that. So let's just say this reels mp4. And I believe we don't have to do this slash because the temp directory already has that. Okay, so now we're going to persist the file to this file path, which is just a unique path based on the timestamp. Right. Alright, that makes sense. So right here now what we want to do is take the file, then split it. To do that, we want to use Ffmpeg. So what is Ffmpeg? This is like one of the most popular library for video processing built in C, I believe. So it's a very, in fact, let me show you something. On my command line, I believe I have it installed here. Right. So actually, there are a lot of libraries, right, on the crate.io that supports, like, I have like bindings for this particular in row, so we don't really need to call the command line. But actually, I'm going to use the command line version. So it's required that for you to run this application, you need to have this ffmpeg installed because using these wrappers are kind of weird. Plus, the documentations are not there, and also, like, having to compile the binding, like, it's just easier to have it installed. It's so much easier to install. I believe you just need to do something like sudo. Actually, if you're on Ubuntu, just do sudo apt-get ffmpeg or something, or like Homebrew or something. Like, it's just so easy to install, so you have it on your command line. So we are going to use we are going to have to call command line for functions from Rust. So we need to use the subprocess tool available for us in Rust. So the way we do that is, so you do something like Rust run a command, the subprocess. So you see they have this subprocess module, but like not some things that just ick me. Like if I want to do something I will not say as simple as this, but something as basic as this, right? I don't want to install a package to be able to do it. It's ridiculous. The same thing too with getting a timestamp. It's like some people were saying like use a package, or where is the guy that said use a package? Got him here. Say use this time crate. It's like Jesus Christ. Like I'm just trying to get a timestamp and I have to install a package. Well, like all sort of nonsense is that. So the same thing here to like Rust provides a way for you to run these command line commands directly without using a package. So I don't know why you would want to simplify that. It's pretty basic actually. So look at this. So basically, we want to run the ffmpeg command that takes the file. You see, we persisted it. What we've done here is we've saved it to the disk. So we actually have a URL here, which is the file path, and we can pass it to the ffmpeg command. So you can. It takes like multiple commands that you can use. So we want to run it direct from the Rust application to edit the file. So what we're going to do here is see we need to get, so based on the max duration, we need to get the number of reads we are going to get from this particular video sent to us. So that means we need to get the duration of the video, right? We need to be able to get the duration of the video, and we also need to, then we now need to calculate, like, if we have 30 seconds here and the video is 2 minutes, how many reels are we going to get from a 2 minute video? If the max duration is 30 seconds, we're going to get 4. Alright, this is where I want to give you guys a good tip. So check out OpenAI's Playground. So basically now I said I want to use the command line, right? I want to use the command line to make all this work. So now I need to query Ffmpeg to get me the duration of this video. Right, I could crack myself and read the documentation and find the commands, but like, guys, let's make our life easier. So let's go to OpenAI's Playground. Right, and you see the ChatGPT is based on the ChatGPT is based on the Davinci 3, I believe. But there's a particular code model that Davinci has written, which I believe you basically only have access to on this command line right here. So what I want to do now is I want to use this code model to tell this GTP. It's not really GTP. I want to tell this AI basically to do this for me, right? Give me a command line that would get me the duration of a video, right? Because when you think about it, like, it's kind of tricky to be able to do where you're able to get the duration of the video directly from the command line. We are going to use this to get us that. So I'm going to, this is a good way to use. So you say a simple function, let's say, that takes in a command line, that takes in that gets the video, that gets the duration of a video, right? Using the ffmpeg command, using the ffmpeg command, like, let's say let's just say command, who cares, a simple Rust function. So you're going to be like, so you look at this, I want to give it as much cheat code as it needs to infer what it wants to. So I'll say it's a function that says get, like, it's called get duration. See how cool is it now? It takes in a file path. We say the file path is a reference to a string slice, and it returns a U64, which is the duration. Then I want it to infer this and keep on going, right? Now, let me increase this. Okay, let's see what it gives us. It'll be very interesting to see what it does. Okay. You see the tricky thing about this? Interesting. All right, so I don't like this implementation. Is kind of not the best, right? I don't like this implementation. And what I'll tell you to do, I think there is a command code. So ffmpeg has this command code. I think ffprobe is what it uses. I think this gives a better formatting, because what it's trying to do is using the ff command and trying to filter through it and get what it wants. But that's kind of not cool. I don't like that. So what I want to do now is I want to take this out. Let's try again. Let's see how smart this guy is. Yep. This is what I'm looking for. Exactly. That's beautiful. All right. So you see, like, one of the cheat codes to using this is to make sure. We should have switched this to Rust already. That's better. Is to make sure you give it as much detail as you need it to, so it doesn't mess up. Because, like, I mean, it's just going to try to make the best it can with what you give it. So we're going to create a new file and call these utils. ORS. We're going to drop this get duration in it. It's a function. That was wrong. So let's hope this works, right? Because so there's that ffprobe command. It's actually a command line that gives us better, like, readable format instead of having to format through the response from ffmpeg command. It's just a much readable human format, but probably not good for the computer to pass, for a program to pass. So what is it saying here? Let's just ignore that. So first we need to get the duration. So let's say let's say you use, yeah, say we use create utils. How do they import these sort of things? Okay, yeah, for create. Forgotten how they do this thing. Let me check. Jesus. Okay, mod. Create. I think it's just utils. Yep. There you go. So we can then say utils get duration. So first, before we do that, you see there's an error here. It's going to tell you need to make this function public, and we need to, let's see what it says here. Let's break this down. Yep. Now we need to pass in the file type, the file path. This is a reference to the file type. Then so this is here. Move occurs and as doesn't implement the copy trait, which is interesting. What we need to do is that file path is actually a string, so let's modify the function it gives us here. Let's call this a string, and this does not have any issue. Okay, good. Actually, let's get the reference to the string. Let's see what happens here. Okay, yeah, I see the issue. The value has been moved here. That's good. Declared as mutable. I believe we need this to be mutable. Not really. Yep, it needs to be mutable. Because what happens here is when you persist the file to this particular directory, it actually moves the file to that directory. So it actually changes something about the file. So that ensures that we need to make sure it's mutable. Right, so this will give us the total duration of the video, which is good. So now you've got to based on the max. So if you have, for example, the maximum duration is 30 seconds, right, and we get a duration of 2 minutes, which in this case it's be 120 seconds, right? We need to get the amount of reels we could get, the number of stories we could get from this video, right? So the number of stories we could get from this video will be equals to, let's call this the number of stories. Actually be equals to the duration modulus the max duration, I believe. Not to the we are passing it in, so it's the max duration. So if you take the modulus of this, right, I believe, let me actually make sure we are right. So if you do 120 to the modulus of 30, what do we get? Get 0. Yeah, of course we get 0. No, that's not what I'm looking for. We need to divide it actually. So we need to divide it, not modulus. We'll use modulus later, because modulus just gives you the remainder. We need to divide it. So we need to, if you divide it by that, it gives us 4, right? Yes. But now in the case we have a bit of extra seconds, right? For example, we have 2 minutes 20 seconds video, right? So if we have a 2 minutes 20 seconds video, that will be a 140 seconds what is it called? 140 seconds video. But we need to give us 5, because like if there's something remaining, I want to get that 20 seconds and make it a video on its own. The way to do this is that, like, this one is giving us 4.6, but this will give us 4, because it's always converted to an integer, right? And the integer is actually the floor, not the ceiling, which instead of going to 5 to give us 4. So what we need to do is that we say if the duration, the modulus of like form dot max duration, like if this is greater than, let's say, 0, right? So if there's something remaining, so it's the idea that, like, if we were to divide 140 by 30 and we had a remainder, and the remainder was greater than 0. So in this case, it will be 20. If it's greater than 0, then we need to increment the number of rows. So number of rows needs to be immutable, and we need to do number of rows, number of stories plus plus plus. Is there a thing in Rust? Can you do that? No, you can't currently. So you need to, you need to make that mutable. And so you get the idea. Is like if we have something remaining, we need to account for it. All right. So this is not necessary apparently. All right. So now that we have the number of reels, right, we then need to go through the number of reels and cut the video up, right? So we need to do like for 0, the range of, number of reels, number of stories. So I believe that's how you did. For let's say index in number of stories. That's good. So then we now need to call a new ffmpeg command to cut that from this 0 to number of views. We want to like cut the video into that particular number of stories, like for each duration. So first we're going to import the command module, right? So this will allow us to run commands. This is kind of similar to what the OpenAI did for us right here, right? So let's do something like that. So we say let output equals to command new, right? You see that now what we are running is ffmpeg. I think that's how you run it. So it's like we're going to do something like this, ffmpeg, right? So we are going to run it to some extra argument. So kind of similar to this, we're going to come here. We're going to do this. We're going to add an argument. Actually, what we're going to do instead is have something called the args, which would give us a way to, it's kind of like a slice of a string slice, right? An array of a string slice. Can you see that? All right. So look at this. So let me just show you an example of what we're trying to do. So we're trying to run something like ffmpeg s. Now this is ffmpeg right here on this command line. You can see this s. Then we're going to give it the something like the first duration, let's say 30 seconds, right? Then to, let's say this is from 0 units to, let's say 30, right? So this will give us the first 30 seconds. So let me show you this. So we're going to grab this function. We're not going to write. We're going to grab this function. And what this function does is it takes a particular seconds and it converts it into this sort of format. Look at this format right here. This is an hour. This is this minute, and this is the second, right? So we want to pass in any number of seconds. Let's say 30 seconds. I want it to convert it into this sort of format. So we'll put that in our utils right here. All right. So we have the SS, or SS is the /SS is the start time, right? That's the start time, right? So we'll say something like utils convert a particular second. So this is what we do. So look at this right here. How do we get the start time? Now that makes sense. Since we are going over the index, so the start time is this start time. The current index multiplied by the max row duration. So you can imagine if this here right here is 30 seconds, right? If the max row duration is 30 seconds, on the first index, the start time is going to be 0. Does that make sense? Why the end time? Right, let me write this here. Let me just write this here. All right. Let's copy this. Let me just explain what this does. So if the index plus 1 is less than the number of rows. This is kind of like if we are, I believe this is when we have an extra seconds, or okay, this is a regular second. It's like the max duration, the the end time will be equals to the max duration, let's say 30, multiplied by the index plus 1. That makes sense, right? So you can imagine on the first index, why the start time will be 0, right? The end time will be 30. How you do that is you add index plus 1, you multiply by the max duration, then that will be 0 plus 1 multiplied by 30, that will be 30. So on the next index, the start time is going to be 30 because the index will be 1. And when you multiply that by the start time to give you 30, and when you multiply that by the index plus 1, the end time will be, guess, the end time will be 60, right? And when you pass that 60 into here, it will give us something like this. So if you pass 60 into convert timestamp, it will give you something like this: 0. What would that give you? Leave it to be 0, 0, 1, 0, 0. Because you can imagine what 60 is. 60 is just a minute. So that's what that will look like for us, right? So this last else is like doing the same thing but adding the extra seconds. Because you can imagine when we have an extra second, do we even have an extra seconds? So okay, let me discuss what an extra seconds is. So the extra seconds is this. You remember when we said the duration of the modulus of max duration? So let me represent this as the extra seconds. So let's extra seconds equals this, right? So yeah, now if we have an extra seconds, we're going to be like, we're going to add the number of stories. Then yeah, does that make sense? All right. So this is actually max duration, and this is max duration. And we have, this is actually number of stories. That's good. So start time. Nice. So this should be a reference. And this also, when you look at this, it says you cannot convert. Okay, yes, there's a, we need to convert it. So start time is a U64. Okay, let's make this I64. All right. So see what duration is. Let's call this an I64, and let's just make sure everything is in sync. All right, that is good. Right. So the end time, which will be 2. We say utils end time. Does that make sense? So the command will look something like this: ffmpeg ss. Right, it look exactly like this. Right. So let's continue. Then I will be the input. So the next command is I, which will be the file path. The initial file path, right? Does that make sense? Then can avoid most of this. Let's just bring this in. Copy. And then the last command will be the output file. And we've not defined our own output file yet, so that'll give us an error. See, no output file. So let's define what our output file is. So let's say let output file will be equals to, let's do something similar like we did for input file here. Right. But this time, instead of having the timestamp here, let's also have the timestamp. Then let's also have the index. Let's have the index. I believe that makes sense, right? All right. So you look at this now. What we now need to do is to say, leave, just go to output or something. Okay, let's say output dot. What did this guy do? right, that's good. That's good. I don't need to print this. So we take this. So let's call this command. It will say let's create a longer lead variable. Yep. So we need to make this mutable. Right. So something wrong there. Yep. I see what is wrong. This is what I want. Yeah. All right. So what we are basically doing here is validating that this command runs successfully. So we are trying to assess, if not, we want to break this whole thing to make sure the command runs successfully. How would that make sense? So that is pretty much it. What we're doing here is also trying to return. So I'm going to explain. So right now, the particular response for this function. What is the response for this function? Let's create a response for this function. So what is this going to return to the user? Let's define it. So right here, we define it as, let's say, the response, right? All right, let's see. So first, remember we created a timestamp, which is the, let's call that our ID, right? So let's define a struct that will be the response. Let's say, let's call this real response. So we're going to define an ID of you, whatever the ID is. What is this? The timestamp is going to be a ID, so let's call that U126, U128, I believe. Right. So we're going to return the number of stories, which is an I60 something. All right. Then we're also going to return what I'll call reels. We call it reels, which would be a list of, say there is a vec of something called, we just call it reels. Let's define another reels. Calling it a class is a struct. Already used to this. Alright. So this we have something called a size, which would be the number of megabytes available on this particular for each reels. Because you can imagine when we cut each reels, we would have a size. And since we save it to this output file, we can get the size, right? So to do that, we're going to do let's do std fs file. So let's open a new file. Let's open that output file, right? So let's do that. Let's do that. Let's unwrap that, and let's get the metadata. Then let's get the, what is it called? The length. Is it the length? Okay, we've got to unwrap it again. We've got to get the length. Right, this will return us AU64, which is the particular length of the file, which is the size of the file, right? So let's do that. So we say let size equals this, right? So the idea is that, like, because the client needs the size, and I'll explain to you why the client needs the size, but for now, let's continue. Right, so we're going to return that back to the size. So we're going to return a vec of these reels. Then that seems good, right? That's not bad. It's not bad at all. All right. So we need to grab this and plug this on, plug this on the response, because a response it has to have this macro on it. We need to import all this. Okay, that's good. That's very good. All right. So now our main function start reels need to return something now. So we aren't returning anything. We need to return a JSON of, let's say, JSON response of real response. Hope that makes sense. All right. So there's this whole nonsense bug here. So essentially, what we also return here is a JSON of real response, right? Something like that. All right. So can you guess what the ID is? The ID is the timestamp when we process this. Number of stories. I believe we already have that. We already have that calculated already. Number of stories. Actually we can just do this. All right. Because you don't need to put a key argument if the name match in Rust, which is a cool thing. So now we would have a vec, right? So let's create a vec before this follow. Let's say let's vec of what is it called? Reels equals to, let's create an empty vec. Let's call this reels. All right, good. So remember we got the size here. So then we'll say reels dot push. I'm going to push a reels structure into it, and the size, that is the size. Alright, so here we're going to return this reels, which is the vector that points to this. It's one guy giving me an error. What is this? It says reels must be mutable. Yes, don't forget mutability. So that's very cool, guys. So that's the fix function is working. I feel like we should test this now. So we need to add this to our route. Let's just make this slash here, and so we need to add, let's say, start reels as our first function. So I believe from here we can do a cargo run. Right, that's good. We are all running well. This will be our temp directory. This is where our files are going to be stored in. And this temp directory gets cleared when the server or the system reloads itself. So that's why it's better for us to store it right there. So we don't have to bother about. Although we'll do deleting ourselves, but in case. Alright, guys. So we have the server running here at port 8000. Right. So I've got a front end set up here. We don't need to really bother about the front end code. All we just need to bother about is the API call, right? So what we want to test now is we have a start Rails kind of endpoint here, right? So if you look at it, it's going to be right here. Okay, this is the start Rails. The Rails server URL is essentially, let me see, it should be our port 800 right here. Let me change that. So we have all that set up. So port 8000/start Rails, right? That's the first endpoint we want to bother about. Okay, so right here, let's just return right here. All right, so let's test it out. So let's pick up a video. So if you let's look at the calling of the endpoint, right? You have a form and you have something called a file, because when you look at what we are passing here, the real form, we have a file and we have something called a max duration, right? Let's change it here to max duration. So the max duration is 30 seconds, right? So what that means is if I take a 1 minute video, for example, we're going to get 2 reels from that, 30 seconds, right? So let's look at that. So does that make sense? So we have a form of a file that is being sent and the max duration, then we send that. Let's see what we get. So let's reload this again. All right. So it says error while uploading file. Okay, this is good. This is a good. So you see we have a course error right here. Let me show us how to fix that error, because that error comes up a lot, right? And I have a fix for it actually. What we are going to write is a middleware. So it's actually very easy to write a middleware. So this is an example of a middleware. So for example, we'll go to our code and we'll have a file called course, for example. Let's say course.rs, right? And let's just do this. I'll have this code up on GitHub, guys. So essentially what you have is you would create an empty struct, right, for any middleware you have, then you implement fearing for it. And if we go back to our documentation on Rocket, that's the way they do it, right? It's like you would implement these traits for this class, then you can attach it to your Rocket server, right? So what is this basically doing is just allowing the connection to go through, because course is like it's something you have to add to the header every time, right? So what I wanted to show you was Fairing. Fairing is the implementation for middleware on Rocket, I believe. Fairing is a, yeah, exactly. So that's the way you do it. So for example, we have this here, right? So you come up here and you need to attach that. And the way you do that is this. So you see the way you attach the course. So let's bring that in. So we just do dot attach. Yeah, I believe that's good. So we need to import course though. And the way we do that is mode imports, then we use course. Alright, let's do that. So let's do that. We'll say, and let's say use course. Exactly. So that's imported. So let's reload our server and try that again. And this course is is a browser issue. If you call this endpoint somewhere else, like on the command line using call or on any other application, you shouldn't get this issue. So server has started. Let's try it again. So remember, we have a 1 minute video right here. We're going to do that. Let's try it again. Let's take our 1 minute video again. So we still have one more error. So let's look at what the server is saying. Server is saying invalid length. Okay, yes, this is an interesting error. Okay, good. Alright. So this is an issue I encountered already, so it's glad for having me here. So let's create so it turns out that like there's a limit on upload on default Rocket server. So let's create a rocket.toml file, right? To change these settings, right? So what I did here was I already have a settings here that just makes the limit 100 megabytes. So for a file 100 megabytes, for a data form 100 megabytes, and for a form 100 megabytes. So that way that would solve us that issue. And let's also do cargo. Let's use a cargo watch. Let me see how you do that again. Cargo watch. Cargo watch. So basically what cargo watch episodes does, it reloads the server automatically for us without having to worry about that. So let's see if this fixes our issue. Alright. Okay, so we have an issue with cargo watch. Alright, yeah, that's it. This should be an X. Alright. So what that does is if we change our code, it will automatically reload the server. Very similar to what things like Django do. So let's try this again. So how's an issue? Let's reload it. Alright, it's loading. Alright, good. So let's see. We have an error uploading file. So it says there's an error. Shown bug. There's an error with unwrapping. So let's look at it. So right here, there's an error unwrapping this duration. Right. So it does look like Ffmpeg failed here. So if you remember, this is the code the OpenAI gave us. What I'm just going to do is I'm going to grab the one it gave me here. I didn't really check it if it had any issues. So what I'm just going to do is grab the one I have here. Looks like this one should not give us any issue. So it looks like the way it passes the command line stuff is not really good. So let's use this one. So this is going to give us an error, I bet. Let me just change the name. Guys, this code is going to be up on GitHub, don't worry. So look at what I mean. The server gets reloaded. Server reloads itself automatically. And don't worry about the warnings, guys. Let me even see what the warning means. It says used. Alright. Alright, let's try this again. Alright. So it looks like the request was successful. Don't worry about this. So let's look at this. We get the ID, which is our timestamp, right? And we have the number of stories too. Remember, I said this was a 1 minute video, so given that our max duration was 30, we're going to get 2 reels. And what is more important here now is this reel list that we have here. Remember the vector that has a structure give us the size. So this is the actual size of the files that is going to be sent back to us. So currently now we're just getting this JSON file, right? We're going to use it to query and get the files from the server. Now one thing we should check out is the server, right? So let's go to the temp directory and find those videos. Let's find those videos. Yeah, those are the videos right there. So you can look at this video. We have 0 and 1. These are this is the original video right here. This is the full 1 minute video. Why this is 30 seconds. And this right here is 30 seconds. Does that make sense? Right. So the server has processed everything for us. It's just waiting for us to come and query them now. Now, what we can do is actually also delete the initial file when we are done. So we can come here and do std.fs because we don't really need the file anymore, right? So instead of covering the so is it remove file, I believe. Right, so we're going to remove the initial file, which I think we named the file path. So this will make sure the initial file goes away since we don't really need it again. Right, so that will remove the file for us. That's good. So now we need one more endpoint. Let's call this endpoint, say Paul. Let's just call it a phone. Let's call it now get rails. Right. So this is an interesting one. So let's go to Rocket, right? Let's search for stream. Let's see. Let's see what they have for us. It's very. Let's check for reader. All right. So let's see what they have. Let's see. Reader. Alright. What I'm actually looking for is called the reader stream. Because what this will allow us to do is so cool. Just check this out, right? Let's see an example. So you see we have an endpoint here called stream and it returns a reader stream of file. Then it goes through a certain path and returns all the file within those paths. So essentially what we want to do is go through if you remember, where's that video? So you see we have 2 videos currently sitting at the tab directory. What we want to do is return them as a stream, right? Almost like this, going through them and yielding them and sending them back to the servers, back to the client. Does that make sense? So let's try something like this. I know it's kind of confusing. So let's import this reader stream and show you guys how we're going to do this. So this is going to be a reader. Let me see how they do it here. Okay, this is going to return that. Reader stream is actually a macro let's say file. I want you to be careful here. This file right here is says it's Tokyo file, which is weird indeed. Alright, so let's look at it. What is this saying? It says, okay, let's move on. So in the function we have to return a reader stream. Very good, very good. Alright. So the only issue is what this file is going to be. So let's see what we can do. I believe the file, this particular file here, let me see what I used it for. This particular file on this function is from let me see. Yep, it's from Tokyo. So let's also import that file. Alright, this is good. This is good. So alright, it's good. So as you can imagine, we need to go through and yield each file. It's actually quite straightforward thing to do. So it will look like this. We need user to pass us a query. Right. So let's say we have something like this. Let's say get this time instead of a post. So we say get Rails. Right. So we'll pass in a query. This is the way they do queries. Alright, so we also need to pass in the query right here. We say query. Because let's name it something. Real query. Alright, so what we need to do now is define our query. Let's just grab this, what this query is. So first, we need the ID of that session. So you remember we have a timestamp for every Reels we do, right? So that will be the ID. I will send that back to the user so he knows what the timestamp is. Then we need the start index. So the idea is that like the start index initially will be 0 and the end is there will be the number of stories we have. But if, for example, we break off, we can actually start from anywhere. So we can start from like the first reel or the second reel to the end reel, right? That wouldn't matter. Let's take out the extension here. We don't need that for this test. Right. So let's do this. So we go through from the start index to the end index in the query. Get our file, then yield it out. Then you see we remove it. So for every file the user gets, we delete it from the server so we don't have our redundant files just laying in our server. So let's do that. I want to static parent. So we remove extension. Let's just call it MP4. Let's take this out. So let me go over it again. From the start index to the end index, which is, let's say, from 0 to when we have 2 reels. We get our file. And I believe it's an underscore. Alright, so look at that. Then we open the file, then yield the file, then now we delete it from the server. So I believe we can test this now. Make it kind of simple. I want to understand. You see how simple that function is, right? It's very simple. So now let's add it to our routes. Let's see if this will work. All right, let's go back to our front end now. So you see, after we get the reels, this is the reel config. You see, we have the number of reels that's been sent to us. Then you can basically take out okay, let's leave that there. So now we can call get reels, passing the ID, see the ID that was sent to us, and passing the number of reels. So now this is what we get from here is not just an ordinary response. It's called a reader, right? So the idea is that like we'll go through the number of reels we have, right? And we're going to open a reader stream. So let me explain to you what a reader stream is. So let's check for JavaScript implementation of a reader stream. See, all right. So you represent a readable stream of bytes that the fetch APIs offers, right? So the idea is basically you start a reader stream and you'll be pulling bytes from it. So basically, and each byte you put from is actually not the file, but like a chunk of what the file could be. So remember when I said that we have to know in advance the size of each reels we are getting, the size of each story. It's because the fact that we are reading when we are reading from our response, we are reading a chunk. It's almost like when you're downloading a file from whatever. You're just downloading it chunk by chunk, byte by byte. So you really don't know what each byte will be, right? So the idea is that we need to uh, build the file. We need to like download the file, and we'll check right here. We'll check if the length now of the byte we download is equals to the size we are expecting. Then we'll close the stream. Then we'll start again, right? And then we'll check if the length of the bytes we've downloaded so far is equals to the real size. Then we'll close the stream. Then after we'll be done. So let's test this first. I know it's kind of confusing, but let's test this. Let's try this. All right, so look at that. First, it's loaded, but the video is actually invalid for now. I don't know why that's the case, but I think I should know why. Uh, why? Let me look at our server. Okay. Let me leave that extension there. Yeah. Alright. Let's try it again. Same thing. You know what I think? I think the file doesn't exist. So it probably doesn't match the file we've saved in the server. So let's think about it this way. Let's open the file. Okay, let's look at this. Something is wrong. Get reels. Invalid integer. Invalid digit found in string. Okay, I see the issue. I see the issue is on the front end. Number of reels. I think we are calling in number of stories. So let's Vicious circle, how could it be? Alright, so it's just a naming issue. Alright. So let the server reload itself and let's go again. Server has reloaded itself. Let's try it again. Good. Look at that. That's awesome. No. This is good. So this is funny. Looks like it returned me one video that I had on the server already. That's very good. So it's working, guys. This code will be on GitHub. Thanks for joining the stream. Bye. Kind of exhausted.